Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in just 1 minute. Let a few more folks come in here. All right, thank you so much for joining us this evening for our 8th public workshop on the future land use update for the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan. My name is Amy Elmore, and I am a consultant for Plan Hillsborough, but I am local and I've been proud to call Tampa Bay my home for over 10 years now, and I'm very honored to be a part of this great project. We also have several members of the Plan Hillsborough team with us today, including Melissa Leinhard, Andrea Papandrew, Melissa Zornita, Jay Collins, and Tyreek Arroyo. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This meeting is being recorded. This recording and the presentation will be available on our website, planhillsborough.org/HC Land Use. For any technical issues throughout the session, you can leave us a message in the chat, or you can contact us by email at papandrewa@plancom.org. So today I'll give you a quick overview of the project, where we are in the process, what changes we're anticipating, and the next steps. After the presentation, we'll have an open Q&A. You can use the raise hand feature to ask a question and we will let you unmute. Please keep your microphone muted and your camera off unless you're speaking. You may also use the chat feature throughout the presentation to ask presenters a question. Please do not chat with each other, but only keep focused on asking the presenters a question. Please note that some features may look different if you're on a desktop or mobile device. So in case you're new to this conversation, I'll give you a quick overview of the project. A little bit about our comprehensive plan. Essentially, this is a legally required document that envisions future growth, provides consistency, prioritizes funding, and protects our resources. And it's typically updated every 7 to 10 years. We know that by 2045, unincorporated Hillsborough County will see 350,000 more people and 107,000 more jobs. We'll also have an increasing demand for transportation, public county services, schools, and recreation. And that's what this update is all about. We're trying to identify how we should grow and where we should grow. And that's what we're talking about today. Over the past year or so, many of you have been part of this update process with us, and we are very grateful for your guidance. Because of your input, we've held 7 public meetings, 5 project advisory team meetings, and received over 1,800 responses from our online survey. And based on that public feedback, we took 8 goals to the board in March. And all of them were transmitted except for goals 4 and 6. So each of the goals here on the screen will go to the board on Thursday for adoption. We have goals 1 and 2 on growth management, goal 3 on community context, goal 5 on agriculture, goal 7 on balance with natural resources, and goal 8 on economic development. So the board asked us in March to make a few more revisions to goals 4 and 6, and that's what we're here to talk to you about today. For goal 4, this goal is about development and it includes topics like mixed use, land use suitability, neighborhood and community development, transit-oriented development, airports and ports, and commercial locational criteria. We're going to focus right now on the changes that are being made to the commercial locational criteria. So commercial locational criteria, if you haven't heard of that before, it allows certain commercial development within some residential or industrial areas where it meets people's needs and integrates seamlessly. For example, if a small convenience store or coffee shop wants to locate within a residential area, they would not be expected to go through the comprehensive plan amendment process, which can take a lot of time and resources. We brought 3 primary changes to the board in March, adding the context classification map to help determine appropriate locations for commercial development, adding the neighborhood mixed use 6 category as a future land use category, and adding language that commercial applications must consider the community plan language. So based on the board direction in March, we are making some additional modifications. First, the context classification map will be changed to the functional classification map. The neighborhood mixed use 6 land use category is still being added. The community plan language added that the livable communities element shall prevail if there are any conflicts. And we've implemented a maximum floor area ratio of 0.25 for retail and commercial in order to preserve industrial lands within our industrial future land use categories. We've also modified a few policies within the urban service area section of the CLC. There's a 1,000-foot standard distance from the edge of the right-of-way. The neighborhood that serves commercial is allowed to go up to the maximum floor area ratio. We've added some of the urban design standards from the current community design component, and we're requiring a 50% frontage on roadways that are suburban commercial, suburban town, or urban general. And it's important to note that these requirements only apply to sites within the urban service area. They do not apply to isolated parcels that are 5 acres or less or are less suitable for residential development. In addition, there's a 5,000 square foot requirement at intersections of arterial or collector roadways, as well as major local roadways. In the rural area, the language outlining the square foot limitations, which are based on the number of lanes, has been simplified, and it's noted that these cannot be waived. In addition, we've added some rural area design standards from the current community design component. Again, it's important to note that agricultural related uses are not subject to commercial locational criteria, which is the existing policy now. So let's dive into goal 6 and some of the modifications we have here. For goal 6, we're talking about the built environment policies. The majority of adopted design related policies has moved to goal 6. Per board direction in March, staff clarified and simplified this language and removed policy language already in the Land Development Code. So staff mainly just streamlined and removed duplicative policies within this section. Based on board direction, staff split the urban and suburban into 2 sections to clarify these policies, reflect their characteristics, ensure a range of uses, and emphasize 3 distinct lifestyle choices. Urban is now defined as more than 9 dwelling units per acre, and suburban is defined with 2 to 6 dwelling units per acre. Staff also added language to the neighborhoods and communities portion to encourage transit supportive corridors and a mix of uses in close proximity within the urban service area. Staff also added language to encourage pedestrian connection to non-residential and mixed-use buildings, as well as context-sensitive design. For the suburban pattern characteristics, again, we've made this into its own section and decreased the suburban definition from a maximum of 9 dwelling units per acre to 6 dwelling units per acre to encourage a more compact development within the urban areas. Staff also added language to encourage livable, walkable, bikeable, and connected communities, emphasizing the support for daily goods and services in suburban areas within the urban service area. They also clarified language to encourage building orientation to maximize street frontage and divert adverse impacts away from residential areas. For residential pattern characteristics sections, there were no major changes, just some slight clarifications. So we'll move on to the circulation section. Again, based on board direction, staff has changed the name of this section to provide clarity and include policies related to multiple modes of travel. In addition, we've added language to encourage transportation design that enhances safe pedestrian, bicyclist, and vehicular multimodal transportation networks. And there's also additional language about including planting, preserving existing vegetation, and using native landscaping in roadway design landscaping. Before we open it up for questions, please note that we will have another virtual meeting on Monday, June 10th at 12 p.m., and this meeting will discuss the same topics provided today. Then the transmittal public hearing to the Board of County Commissioners is scheduled for August 8th at 6 p.m. You can always visit our website for more information on this and other ways to get involved. And if you have any further questions, you can always get in touch with us by phone or email, and we will be happy to help. So with that, I'm happy to open this up for discussion. Please use the raise hand feature on your device or put your questions into the chat. Again, please keep your camera and microphone off unless you are speaking. From where we were to where we are? That's a great question. So, and Melissa and Andrea, I'm happy to let you take this, but I want to say, so where we were and where we are is really on track with where we were hoping to be, I believe. So we have 6 out of the 8 goals that we previously discussed at our last public meetings. 6 of those were transmitted to the board and will be adopted on Thursday. So that's really, really wonderful and excellent that we're moving forward with those. For goals 4 and 6, some of those changes, many of them are just clarifying language, simplifying language, adding some different language into these policies to ensure that a lot of the current development patterns that we want to encourage are encouraged. So I think that we're moving forward really well with a lot of these different things that we wanted to see happen. But Melissa and Andrea, did you want to provide another perspective on that or some additional information?
Sure. I can add, Cami, I'm guessing you're probably most interested in commercial locational criteria. Some of the major changes that we undertook between the March meeting with the public hearing with the board and today is reflected in the red line and the clean drafts that are up on our website that Andrea referenced before in the chat. And one of the major changes is we added the functional classification map to the criteria for how you can meet commercial locational criteria. And in that way, it opened up more choices, because right now we use the 2040 cost affordable map. As you know, that is a pretty outdated map that isn't reflective of what's going on with roadways today. Another thing that we added, to try to balance the permissiveness with some of the design features is we added 1,000 feet for the urban service area distance. So we don't have that chart any longer where it prescribes, the 300 feet, the 900 feet, the 1,000 feet. And we kept the functional classification map on there, so you can actually meet CLC with either of those maps in the urban service area. Another major change was to default to the maximum floor area ratio for each future land use category. If you all recall today in the plan, there's a table that shows square footage limits for each future land use category. Those would no longer apply. It would default to your future land use category floor area ratio to see how big, like how much square footage you could get. Trying to think, Andrew, what am I missing?
For the urban service, well, I would say the rural area still has the square footage um limitations based on roadway. So like a
Yes.
2-lane and a 2-lane road be up to 20,000 square feet per intersection, up to a 4-lane and 4-lane roadway, which would be up to 40,000 square feet. So there are square footage limitations for the rural area, because to kind of scale the commercial to the more rural setting versus in an urban service area where the maximum FAR would apply. And we do have some design standards in there for both urban and rural design. Those are coming from the existing community design component, which is goal 6, referenced by Amy. And then we just kind of tweak the language a bit to update it from the 2008 update. And we kept all, the policies in there today on the waiver process. So there's still a waiver based on compatibility of the use with the surrounding area. And we still have the language on if there's any conflicts between the commercial locational criteria and any requirements in land development code, then those land development code special district requirements would prevail. So we did not remove any of that language. And of course, we still have our community plans and our livables community element, and those specific policies based on which community plan you are in would still apply. And I know we have a
Yeah, the other
couple
thing,
of hands raised.
I just before we go to another person, Melissa Zornita messaged me to point out, and she makes a really great point. There is an added feature under 4.7.2 where basically 50% of the site, if it fronts along a roadway that has a context classification of suburban commercial, suburban town, or urban general in the context classification map, either by FDOT's map or the Hillsborough County context classification map, as long as 50% of the site fronts along one of those roadways with that classification, you would then meet commercial locational criteria, which is a pretty big diversion from what we have today, which is only deals with intersections. And Amy, if you want to call on the next person, I'm a little bit in the sun, so I can't quite see.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I think we have Sabine is next. And I know you've put a couple of things in the chat, but go ahead. Sabine, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Sabina, and I have a couple of questions. I'm not sure if this is true, but in some urban areas, they have done parking behind the buildings. If it's, like a commercial strip development, it's a 0 frontage instead of the 100-foot frontage that you're talking about, and then the parking would be behind the buildings, and that would allow more friendly pedestrian access than when you have to fight through cars to get to the front door of the business. So I wondered if that was in the plan. That's one of the questions.
That's a great question. If you look at the clean version of goal 4, you can see under policy 4.7.5, we do have language that reflects that. It is written from a, trying to increase safety and connectivity, and really trying to provide for more of a pedestrian friendly streetscape. We do have language. There's a couple bullets under there about having pedestrians access the public right of way, making sure we connect between like uses, providing continuous and direct connections, encourage the maximization of street frontages by orienting the long side of buildings toward the street corridor, and then encourage design of buildings in urban areas to include elements that attract pedestrian attention, such as large windows and signage, that kind of stuff. So we do have some design features under that policy that help address that issue.
But not zero frontage.
It doesn't
orientation only.
It doesn't specifically call that out. That sounds like it would be something more prescriptive and be appropriate for the land development code. The comprehensive plan is really high level and we're really zoomed out. So we talk about policies and what our vision is, how we want communities to look. So then the land development code is what the more detailed mechanism is in place to enforce those things.
Okay. Well, that might be a similar answer then to my other question, which is, we're trying to figure out ways to combat climate change, and one of them, trees really help. Native trees especially, that you don't have to water and all that. So I noticed that the landscaping that you encourage that. Is there a way to require trees in parking lots, for example?
So that is something that would be something more detailed in a code. That is not really a comprehensive plan,
Okay.
something that we would implement at that stage, but we do have a lot of tree-friendly language within these 2 goals, especially talking about the pedestrian-friendly streetscape. So your point is well made, and we agree with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sabine. I think we have Scott next.
Hi. So I was on the committee that, the citizens committee that met with you guys a few times, and
Yes. So great to see you again.
So it's good to be back. I kind of disappeared for a little while because work got busy, so I had to miss a lot of these meetings. One thing I mentioned in those meetings, and a recent one, and that I'm back on again today, is when you guys talk about all the surveying you did of residents. In the surveys you went over, reviewed in the meetings, you frequently said the #1 response was preserve nature. And there was, in one meeting, one of the meetings I did attend online, I said, well, I think to residents, that means the nature near me. They don't necessarily mean preserve the wildlife habitat that's designated by the county or the state, but the trees near me. When I attended community meetings, not online, but in gyms and things, that's what they talked about, the trees near them that they were afraid of losing to development. And in the meeting that I did attend online, it was said, well, there's not much we can do about that. And what I noticed in the goals 4 and 6 that I looked through, there wasn't a lot of talk about green space or preserving green space or encouraging preservation of particular kinds of trees. In goal 6, built environment, and I'm looking at my copy, it's on page 30, where it says in bold, provide for a built environment with the goal of fostering a prosperous community, increasing business activity, and improving health, safety, and welfare. But there's no mention of and preserving sort of the unique natural environment of Hillsborough County, whether it's wetlands or trees or native trees, et cetera. And so I didn't know, is it possible there's hardly any mention in this document that was emailed to us for goals 4 and 6 of natural environment, green space, if we're going to build mixed use spaces, encouraging some of that space to be devoted to green space. et cetera. So I didn't know if there's an opportunity to, at least like in that goal 6, to integrate some mention of natural environment, green space, native plants, whatever.
So I will just mention, thank you so much, Scott. That's great. We do have goal 7, I believe. Is that right, Andrea? That balance with natural resources. And that is all about our open spaces and our natural resources. So we have an entire goal that's dedicated to that, because we did, we heard the public saying, yes, we want to preserve our environment. And that's definitely something that's important to us as well. So, with that public feedback, that's actually one of the goals that is getting adopted on Thursday. So that's wonderful. I'm not sure, Melissa, did you want to add anything?
I did. That's a great answer, Amy. So just to zoom out a little bit, the comprehensive plan has a lot of different what we call elements or sections, and the future land use element, we're calling it a section now, that's called element today. But the new future land use section that we're talking about today, this is just 2 out of the 8 goals that we're moving forward with for approval with the board. And like Amy said, 6 of them have already been transmitted to the state, and we're bringing them back for formal adoption on Thursday evening. That does include that natural resources goal 7. But the other thing that I wanted to point out is that beyond the future land use element, which again is just one part of the comprehensive plan, we have this is a great slide that shows it. We have other puzzle pieces like they're shown on here. Under natural open space, under that section, we have recreation and open space, which talks heavily of those things that you mentioned. We also have coastal management, which gets into, the coastal hazard and those types of things. And then we have an entire other section that talks about our environmental resources, and that's called environmental and sustainability. All 3 of those sections, they kind of dig into the meat of the environment and its qualities, and what we need, what our vision is for the future. And also they're already updated and they're already approved by the board. We're here with the last section of the entire comprehensive plan to get updated. Really fundamentally hasn't been updated since 2008, but the environmental topics, those are mostly covered by those 3 other sections. And then there's one goal in the future land use section that does cover natural resources as well, like Amy said.
Okay,
so we didn't forget about them. That's what I'm trying to say.
Cool.
I would just add to that real quick, Scott, if you don't mind. We also, one of those, this screen is a little hard to see, but one of the sections in the comp plan is also livable communities element. So the unincorporated county has 22 community plans. So, for example, Riverview has a plan, Apollo Beach, Greater Palm River, Lutz, Valrico's working on theirs. They might be the 23rd. They've got some community meetings out there coming up in the future. And so the livable communities element, each community plan, also has specific language to protect some of the natural resources that are in that community based on what the community vision and goals are. And I want to just correct something that I answered Cammie's question earlier. I wanted just to make a clarification that we have added this new policy 4.7.13 that does state that if there's a conflict between the provisions of this objective and what's in the community plans or what's within the LDC, that the land development code or the community plan language would prevail. So we did add some clarifying language that if there's a conflict arise, we are looking at that community plan and that land development code language.
So kind of related to that, perhaps you can update me. At a few meetings I asked, like, is the Apollo Beach community plan going to be updated? And I was told that there was nothing in the works right now because it's 25 years old, or it's however old. And has that changed? Is it in the works now to update that plan, and where could I participate in that process if it is?
Hey, good evening. This is Jay Collins with the Planning Commission staff. Currently, the only community plans that the Board of County Commissioners has instructed staff to update or to create are Valrico, the Greater Palm River, which we're finishing, and Riverview, which we will begin in the fall. So staff themselves, we do not initiate the
Okay.
update of a community plan or create a community plan out of scratch, that is something that is actually initiated by the Board of County Commissioners. So the first linkage, we usually have conversations with people such as yourself, Scott, who are interested in updating or creating a community plan, is get in contact with their
Okay.
elected officials and have a conversation with them about why community planning is important to your community and why you feel the plan should be updated.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Excellent. And we do have a couple of questions here in the chat that I want to note. One question is, where can we find the community plans? And those can be found on the Plan Hillsborough website, planhillsborough.org. I believe I'll try and find that backslash for you.
Oh, I'm going to add the link in the chat.
Andrea's got it. Beautiful. So you can see the livable communities. That includes all of our community plans. There was also a question in the chat about trees on the street trees. On the landscaping, remove street trees that cannot support the root systems without lifting the sidewalks. That would be for the, that would kind of go under that land development code section. And that would be a little bit more on the 10,000 foot view level, or really street view level, when we're a little bit, we're trying to create kind of those policies that help to shape the community. Melissa, did you want to add anything to that?
No, Amy, I think you covered it. I was just going to add about the community plans. There's also a really cool story map that we have on our website. Andrea linked it to the actual PDF of the adopted plans, but I'm going to put the story map in there that tells you when things were adopted, what kind of the process was for each community. And it's a really good graphic and visual to walk you through that process.
Thanks, Melissa. And we also have a question about where to find previous recordings of past meetings. If you go to the planhillsborough.org/HC land use, then if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see a whole section called past meetings, and you can find the links there, as well as all of the presentations and even the goals 4 and 6 clean and redline draft.
Yes, if you're looking for a previous board or planning commission public hearing, Hillsborough County does have its own YouTube channel, so those will also be on their YouTube channel. We did link the, I believe, March 7th transmittal hearing to the project page, so you don't have to go searching for that one.
Scott, did you have another question?
No, thank you.
Okay. Right, I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. If anyone else does have a question, please feel free to raise your hand or put them into the chat. Again, if you have a question at any time, you can always get in touch with us by phone or email. If you don't write this down for some reason, the contact information is on that planhillsborough.org website that you can go to at any time, and we'll be happy to talk with you more about your specific area or community plan or anything like that. Not, oh. Looking at the community plans like Apollo Beach and how it's being used in development now. Can you talk a little bit about how we use the community plans within the development now?
Sure, I can handle that. So as part of our duty at the Planning Commission, we do consistency reviews. So that means we look at various applications, whether they're rezonings, which are under the purview of Hillsborough County Development Services, or comprehensive plan, a map amendment, which is something that we take care of at the Planning Commission and manage ourselves. We look at the community plans. If the site is in the community plan, we look at that very seriously, and we take into account the policy direction in the community plan. And those community plans, like I mentioned before, they are all adopted. So they are part of the overarching livable communities element that Andrea was mentioning. So those policies, they inform our decision making, as in they form our recommendation, and they're part of a very serious part of our consistency review and our finding. Hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Melissa. Were there any other questions? Feel free again to raise your hand or put them into the chat. We'll give you just a minute here. Oh, Scott?
So just to go back a little bit to Vicky's point and what Melissa was just saying is that I'm sure you see this in the meetings where there's like when residents will come to their perhaps one and only planning committee meeting, and they're unhappy about some development but they're surrounded by people who are there every week, the lawyers and developers and that, and then yourselves who are very familiar with all this. To the layman, it seems frequently like there's a big disconnect between what happens and what the community plan says. And I'm sure you guys encounter that all the time. And I know that I encountered that for my first time with development on 41 in Apollo Beach, where the Walmart's going to go. That a lot of the people in the community felt like that was not consistent with what they felt the community was. I don't know how to get around that disconnect, how to get around that educational gap, or that I know that it's an issue, and that's what I would like to talk. I'll talk to Michael Owen's office about creating a new Apollo Beach community plan. Some of it's too late. That's what I learned, is that a lot of that property was owned 10 more years ago. It just sat just because it was a farm when I bought my house doesn't mean it was always going to be a farm. And it was approved for commercial development a decade ago. It's just they waited until now to do it, right? And that's it's also mind-boggling. I'm sure for your jobs, like there's so many moving pieces to keep track of, and changes in laws and changes in owners and changes in motivations and desires, and I just don't see how it all gets done. How there's just not more chaos than we live with now. Everything manages still to somehow hold together. But I think that's a real issue for a lot of residents, is the difference between the community plan and what they see happening. I don't have a solution for how to help straighten that out, but I see it in action, and I've been frustrated by it too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that, Scott. I think you're doing exactly what the solution is. The solution, you're getting involved, you're coming to meetings, you're participating and telling us how you're thinking, and, telling us what you're seeing. And I think that part of the community process, I think Plan Hillsborough has been, I'm a resident here, and just as, taking my consultant hat off, they are some of the most open people. They want to hear the community. And that's why they have all of these, 8 community meetings now, 9 next week, trying to figure out how do we go to the community and really bridge that gap. So, they want to hear from you. They want to know what you're seeing and how they can help. And I totally agree. Sometimes it can be very frustrating, because when you're planning for something, you're not going to see those changes sometimes for a long time, sometimes years at a time. You won't see those changes. So it's really about planning for our future, for generations and that sort of thing. And it's so important to get involved now so that we can have the future that our communities want to see. So thank you very much for being here and for letting us know. And I hope you'll continue to stay involved. And I know that Plan Hills, Melissa, Andrea, me, we're all here to listen. I think we've got Cami.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, obviously, I'm a land use lawyer, or the folks around know that, and so I am one of the people that are there regularly and help my clients navigate the regulations, which are just as complicated for them as they are for you all. It's different, it's their business, but I think the one thing that's important to know about a community plan is not a cure-all. As you mentioned, Scott, the Walmart that was approved a long time ago, and those landowners have property rights that were in place prior to the community plan. And I think it's important to understand that when you're doing a community plan or even a comprehensive plan update, there are property owners who have basically a property right to the entitlements that they have. So it is important to participate, but I think the folks might be less frustrated if they understand it's a balance, right? And then, it's not something the planning commission can take away because now someone else wants something different. As well intended as staff is, and they can hear you out, but if there's something that was already approved and something that's allowed, then that's where I think the misunderstanding and miscommunication comes into play. And I participated in a lot of those community plans, and sometimes there were unrealistic expectations set up by those community plans. And so I definitely encourage updates with full transparency. I think we all have a lot more information now. We have a lot better ways to communicate. And maybe with new updates, I think maybe people would have the opportunity to better understand with the stakeholders of where things can be changed and where things can't be changed.
Cami, that's a wonderful point. There's property rights, there are state statutes, and we are subject to those. So there are some things that we have to adhere to no matter what. So those types of things, the only way to change state statutes is to, talk to your legislators and that sort of thing, the people who represent you. And the Plan Hillsborough is here to make sure that all of those statutes and laws are honored within what we do. And at the same time, trying our best to also listen to the community's needs and, try and find that common ground. So thank you, Cami. That's excellent. Great point. I'll give folks here just another minute to add anything to the chat or raise their hand if they have any additional questions on either goal 4 or goal 6.
I would point out that on our project website, we do have a public comment feature, and I think we try and do this on most of our websites, if not all of them, where you can write in any public comment that you have on the language. So if you can't attend a meeting, or you can't join a webinar, we do take those comments from our website, and we anything received before a public hearing goes into a packet that goes to the elected or appointed officials.
Excellent, Andrea. So yes, there are many different ways that you can get involved and stay involved. Even if you can't, if someone wasn't able to make it tonight and they want to provide comments, again, we'll have another meeting next Monday at noon. So please feel free to share that information with friends, families, colleagues, and we are very happy to answer any questions that you might have about your community. Were there any other thoughts, Melissa, that you wanted to mention?
Nothing in particular. I just wanted to thank everyone for being here. I know this is, everyone's evening. Everyone wants to eat dinner and take care of their family. So we really appreciate you coming. This has been a really big community investment, and we've had a lot of great feedback over the last, 8 months or so. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Melissa. Well, I don't see any further questions in the chat or raised hands. So at this point, I'll say thank you so much for being here and contact us anytime. We look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Amy, why are we in this weird together mode?
I am not sure.
Okay, I didn't know if you had clicked that.
No.
Okay, never mind.